as the last of the 4 major bases also got attacked by a horde of zombies. Their leader, Xing Tian, contacted Zhang Yi. What? Your side was also attacked by zombies? Damn, we also encountered one here yesterday, and more than 100 of my people had died defending the base. Where did these damn things come from? Don't tell me that it's like Resident Evil type of shit, right? Hearing this, Zhang Yi replied on the other end of the line that no one really could identify or say for sure about the matter. But one thing sticks out, and thus those zombies were very strange. They couldn't be killed even if their heads were cut off, and it seems like someone is manipulating them behind the scenes, sort of like a puppet master, and we're all been dragged into his show, dancing to his tune at the moment. However, after hearing what you said, I feel that the problem had somewhat gotten even more troublesome. There is a distance of more than 100 kilometers between our two forces, but both of them were attacked by zombies. If there is really someone who can secretly command the zombies, it is definitely not just one person. Hearing Zhang Yi's analysis, Xing Tian couldn't help but pinch his forehead in weary. Are you saying that there is another terrifying force in Tianhai City? One that can control corpses at that? Xing Tian got frustrated, and the more and more he thought about it, the more he was losing his cool. So his next question came out on the other end of the line in anger, making Zhang Yi pull his head a couple inches away from his phone. Wait! If that's the case, wouldn't that force be invincible? After all, more than 10 million people must have died in Tianhai City. They could have beaten us to death just by relying on corpses. Why wait until now? I mean, take your shelter as an example. No matter how strong it is, it definitely cannot withstand people smashing it every day. Hearing this, Zhang Yi had an incredulous look, as if to say, why does my shelter had to be used as an example? Do you intend on jinxing it? Zhang Yi replied that Xing Tian should take his current situation one step at a time in resolving it. Also, he should contact the other bases to see if they had also encountered the same situation. The very next day, Zhang Yi, curious to see if the situation had gotten any better, took a look outside from the window. However, he was disappointed to see another horde of zombies around the shelter's compound. Having enough of this shit, Zhang Yi donned his combat suit, preparing to go outside. He also instructed the rest to follow, including Flower as well. Outside, Chunlei mustered up the strength to freeze a couple of zombies. And watching the entire scene was Zhang Yi, who confirmed something he deduced now long ago. As I expected, there are controllers among these zombies. After covering that site, these zombies lost their direction of movement. Uncle Yu, on the other hand, was strapped with a flamethrower as he continued to set the zombies ablaze. Zhang Yi strapped a flamethrower as well and joined him. And together, they both released a massive amount, setting the zombies ablaze in a sea of flames. Soon, the shelter's compound was littered with scattered burned-out corpses. It looks like what I guessed was right after all, Zhokir said. She was by the shelter's window, observing and collecting data on everything that took place. There is a virus inside the zombies that seems to like cold and is afraid of heat. After being burned by high temperature, it will lose its activity and its mobility. Back outside, it was the same as yesterday. The rest of the zombies flee in panic when they were set on fire. Seeing this familiar scene, Zhang Yi murmured that he always feel that something is not quite right with what was happening. These things weren't the normal typical zombies that everyone was quite knowledgeable about. Seeing Zhang Yi's sudden demeanor made Chunlei ask what the problem was. We eliminated more than half of yesterday's wave of undead. But the number of the zombie that came today was a lot more, almost 3 times as much. This shows that the zombie virus, if it is indeed a virus, was spreading very quickly. And those who may die in the process will also turn into zombies. The expression on Liang Yu, Chunlei, and Uncle Yu were the same. They were all shocked with the sudden revelation. Zhang Yi then tells them that it was time to head back to the shelter and explain the situation of the zombies to everyone. Back at the shelter, Zhang Yi reiterates everything he knows so far to everyone. He then continues that if what he thinks is literally the case, then, sooner or later, the entire Tianhai City will be completely occupied by zombies. I can't imagine how we will live at that time. The tension in the lounging hall was palpable as everyone's facial expressions were that of concern and worry. Yang Xinshin took a sip of her coffee in deep thoughts, then spoke up seconds after, adding that at present, this tendency was not obvious yet. Otherwise, the other party would not just mobilize thousands of zombies to attack us every time. However, if they can't figure out the truth behind the sudden appearance of the zombies, they will definitely become a huge trouble in the future. Hearing this, Lu Karen sighed heavily, wishing that if only the current weather was summer, then those zombies would all rot and turn into skeletons. After a brief silence, Zhang Yi continued that the scariest thing about the undead was not their number, but the fact that they seem to have controllers, so they are not mindless monsters. He again proceeds with a heavy sigh. In addition, they are difficult to kill and can only be burned or dismembered. This adds to the difficulty of resolving them. Hearing this made Yang Xinshin ask Zhang Yi, "So the most important thing is to solve the manipulator behind them?" Well, where to find them seems to be simple. The problem is every time we kill them halfway, they disappear. I can't even tell if there is a manipulator among the corpses. After all, this kind of ability is just too creepy and unorthodox. Zhang Yi said this as he sat on the sofa, then laid back and continued that everything they had encountered ever since meeting the zombies had been full of uncertainties, and it was difficult for anyone to use common sense to infer. Hearing this, Zhou Qi said that she actually had a guess. "Oh, really? What is it then? I have been studying the bodies of zombies in the past 2 days, and I did find a very weird virus-like thing in them. It can withstand extreme cold and can even survive at -100 degrees Celsius. It can also invade the nerves of living things and control the body. It does not conform to the modern biological definition of viruses. Its structure should be between a virus and a cell, but it can invade the host's body for control and reproduction like a virus." Hearing this, Zhang Yi and a few others were lost, so he asked Zhou Qi to explain in a much simpler way for them to understand. "Oh, what I meant to say was after the end of the world, biology has been redefined due to the influence of gamma rays. For now, let's call it a zombie virus. Simply put, it reflects the habits of some bacterial colonies and even social animals. When zombies are among the zombies, their actions are consistent and even reflect a certain degree of wisdom. However, in the corpses studied in the laboratory, even the reproductive instinct is weakening, and the stress resistance is also getting worse. So I suspect that the control method of this virus may be similar to biological populations, and the mother body with the virus can control them in some way. Oh, so it's similar like a remote control. Of course, it doesn't mean a very long distance. For example, animals can convey messages through smell, and this mutated virus must have its own way of conveying messages." Hearing this, Zhang Yi remarked, "This is getting interesting. Do you mean that as long as the mother body is killed, these infected zombies will also die?" Sighing heavily, Zhou Qi shook her head, uncertain. "It's hard to say. At least it won't be what it is now, able to act on a large scale and with a certain degree of wisdom." Hearing this made Zhang Yi had a sudden realization. So as he immediately straightened up himself on the sofa, he exclaimed that he seems to have understood something. Upon hearing this, everyone waited for him to continue. "Have you noticed that the attacks of the zombie wave in the past 2 days seem to be fierce, but also seem to have a certain degree of intelligence? But in fact, these zombie swarms' playstyle is quite naive, and they always choose to retreat after a significant number of them are killed. It feels like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old child slowly learning to speak. You can only take your time word by word." Hearing this, Liang Yu seems to be following up. "Wait a minute, Zhang Yi. I seem to understand what you are talking about. These undead may have mutated after human death, or mutated viruses may have taken over the human body and become the mother body. Not long after they gained wisdom, they are still learning how humans fight. If there really is such a thing, it should be in existence that can be called the Corpse King. After all, we have confirmed 2 conditions for obtaining superpowers. One is on the verge of death, and the other is the stimulation of external objects like ice soul. It is not impossible to gain superpowers after death. If it is true that the corpse mutated and gained wisdom, then the next attack will continue. And with that, we will have the opportunity to gather more intelligence." Zhang Yi told everyone to pay attention to every detail of their actions to find out how to deal with them. However, first they must clear out the zombie wave in the surrounding areas as soon as possible. Their existence was a huge security risk. Hearing this also made Liang Yu points out another problem. She asked that if the mutation of corpses produced intelligence, how could they cause riots in various areas of Tianhai City at the same time? Zhang Yi had no answer to this question because he had no clue. However, Yang Xinshin chimed in that moment, mentioning that it must be the subway. Subway? We know that the closest zombie activity area to us was Tsitsu subway station. The subway in Tianhai City extends in all directions and can lead to any area. With this, the zombies also move to various areas through the subway. With his head now leisurely resting in his hand, Zhang Yi added that it could also explain why the group of corpses they faced was the smallest. The location of Luck Manor is relatively remote, and only Tsitsu subway line passes through. At that moment, Zhang Yi had a thought, so he called Yang Xinshin. Yang Xinshin continued to observe the status of the other forces. "I need to know what the zombie situation is like there." He then added that sooner or later they have to find a way to fix these things once and for all. Hearing this, Yang Xinshin agreed to do just that. Then, with a satisfied smirk, Zhang Yi holds his chin and continued that as for the survival of other people in Tianhai City, That's not something they need to worry themselves about. If they are reluctant to cut off the strength of a strong person, then they can keep fighting the zombies till they perish. Especially the snow worship cult. Their number of followers is increasing, which already makes me feel a bit threatened. It is not a bad thing for us that they have lost some of their staff during this crisis. Zhang Yi said this as he laid on the sofa with a heavy sigh.